Hi everyone, my name is Navtanay and I'm a product manager here with Druva, mainly with the Phoenix product. And Curtis gave a really good introduction about data protection as a service and how we leverage it. Actually, an in-depth, not an introduction. And I'm just going to talk about how do we take that copy of your backup and leverage it for DR, right? So before I get into it, really quickly, just going into this diagram that Curtis has explained, having a production server, backup servers, a dedupe appliance, and writing to tape, right? The way DR has already traditionally been done is literally just having the same environment, writing to a different site. It can be in the same city, it can be in a different data zone, power zone, or a different region altogether. This is, again, if you have an RTO of seconds, literally one site goes dark and you have to just bring up the second site. This is probably the only way you'll ever do DR, right? And which is why it's costly. 2 times the hardware cost, 2 times multiple, whatever hardware that you have, whatever servers you have, software that you have in your production, you just have to invest in literally a second version of that, right? When backup vendors started leveraging DR in the cloud, what happened was we started taking backup copies, putting it in the cloud, and trying to do an AMI conversion of the VMDK file that you've backed up, and try and spin it in the cloud when DR happens, basically, right? The problem with AMI conversion is it's really dependent on the size of the machine, and Amazon itself does not give you an SLA for it because of that, right? You still have a lot of the old world problems that with DR with this kind of scenario, where you have multiple data copies and then you're paying for what you're managing in the cloud, you're paying for a 24/7 rate for it, and then you're basically just force-fitting this on-prem solution into the cloud to get a DR scenario, right? So our approach to disaster recovery as a solution is, this is the part that we've spoken about in depth, where you have your workloads running in a cloud cache, or you can write directly to the Druva cloud platform. Your workloads can be in a VMware cloud environment. We will take the last copy, spin it up in your in your own AWS VPC, and just keep it ready for DR. And with that, you don't invest in hardware, tapes, offsiting, or any of that stuff, right? One thing that we do, because I think Curtis also mentioned that, is we don't want to have access to your data. All the data stored in Druva is encrypted, it's a deduped, so we can't read it. Which is why we are not leveraging our own cloud portal and giving you that DR benefit over here. We are giving you a control plane to run your DR in your own environment.
Question regarding integration with VMware Cloud on AWS.
Yes.
Can an instance of VMC can also be used as a target for DR by Druva?
Not right now.
Not yet.
So it goes one way, where you have VMC workloads that you would back up, and then we would do a DR to the cloud for
Okay, I'm thinking about a situation where you have a local on-prem vSphere infrastructure, and you do the backup using Druva, and you do the DR on a VMC instance. This is not currently possible.
We could restore to VMC. We could restore to VMC. So we could, when we back up a VMware virtual machine, we can pretty much restore it to any other VMware environment. So we could restore back to VMC. What the DRaaS component of this is an automation of keeping that
and that part is not.
Right now we don't have that automation going.
You're missing the integration with the orchestration part.
Correct. Yeah, it'd be more manual at this point.
Feature request.
We hear you. Right. So just a summary of what I was talking about, right? The first way to do DR is literally the only way you will have seconds worth of RTO, and it's costly. The way we've done DR in the past with a backup copy, and versus how we do it, and I will get into how we are able to achieve RTO of under an hour and an RPO of minutes in about a couple of minutes, right? With around the same cost, with any other backup solution doing a DR to the cloud, we can give you an RTO of less than an hour where a lot of vendors are at this 4-hour or around and about mark. Right, and that's the benefit that you get doing DR with our solution. It just increases the accessibility of DR at a fraction of a cost because you're not paying for any hardware, and I'll stop saying that after this. So what does that mean, right? Traditionally, you will have a lot of tier 1 workloads or Oracle workloads or mission critical workloads that are being DR'd. And then a lot of tier 2 workloads and beyond not being set for disaster recovery by a lot of admins because the cost of doing that does not match the actual workload. We can bring that accessibility into those workloads, right? We can support VMs and cloud native apps and give you an elastic disaster recovery, right? Scale as you need it and then terminate those instances or fail them back to your VMware environment when you need that. And then we've recently released new capabilities to manage them and automate the DR even better. And we give you an option to automate your runbooks, define steps for booting it, introduce a time delay in case you want a VM to start booting up and want to make sure that it's booting up, even an option to insert a script. Say, let's go inside the VM and see if my application is booted up before I want to start a second VM. And I'll do a demo of that. Right. We spoke about this architecture, right, where we spin up our EC2 instances and scale in and out. Easily we store the data in S3. For DR into AWS, we have a small DR proxy, a small virtual machine, which runs in your environment, takes the latest copy of your data, and does a in-place driver injection, and stores it as a EBS snapshot, just ready to boot, where all of this is done in the background, right? At the time of DR, all you're doing is clicking, let's do a failover, let's do a production failover, and we have it ready to spin up into an EC2 instance in under an hour, regardless of the size of the VM.
So are we storing in a snapshot or an EBS volume? Because the snapshot's an S3 object.
So EBS snapshot.
EBS volume or a snapshot that is an S3 object? Because a snapshot of an EBS volume is an S3 object.
Yes, so snapshot of an EBS volume.
So it's an S3 object that at restore time is going to be copied into an EBS volume.
Yeah.
Right. Keeps my storage costs down.
Yeah, basically, right? If you're EBS is probably the most expensive form of Amazon storage.
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to get to a really low RTO at the cost of storing everything in EBS.
Exactly.
Or
right.
Possibly I might want that as an option.
Right, and then after you've done a DR, we also give you an option of cloning that VPC into multiple regions so that you don't have a single point of failure again, right? I'll talk about one-click failover and failback in my demo. I'll talk about automating the runbooks, introducing scripts, time delays, and giving you the ability to do unlimited testing for compliance and reports for failover and failback activities.
Question. But you're basically reinstantiating virtual machines that were backed up from anywhere into AWS as EC2 instances.
Yeah.
You are just doing that for one or many virtual machines. But I'm thinking about the complexity that most of the time comes with entire stack of VMs that made up an application, like networking, firewall rules, load balancers. That part cannot be done yet.
Yeah. I agree. I get what you're saying, and which is why we've made these runbook changes, and I'll be demoing that. If you have a bunch of VMs, you're not doing it for each and every VM, going and saying, let's fail over this VM, let's fail over VM number 2, let's fail over VM number 3. When you have a DR plan that you create with Druva, it can be 10 VMs, 100 VMs in that one plan. Each of this, you can introduce a script at every instance, which will go in and do exactly what you're saying.
So for example, in these runbooks, I can decide on which subnet to put different
Yes.
VMs in the application stack, can generate, instantiate an elastic load balancer and things like that. So it's possible.
Whatever you can do in a SSH script, you can just get it into that VM. And then making sure that that script executes, you can say, do this next step only 10 minutes after. So you can introduce a time delay if you want to.
And of course, you can do dry runs at any time and validate the...
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Right. Can you?
You need to drag it over. Drag it to the left.
Or you can just mirror the screen, Curtis.
Or you can drag it to the left. We already figured this part out.
Where is it?
It's up there.
Oh, it's up there. All right, I'll sit down because I have to use the mouse for this. Oh, and I need to keep looking here because...
This is why you want to
There you
keep
go.
at the screen.
Yeah. Right, give you guys a full view.
You missed it.
All right, is this visible to everyone? Can everyone see what's happening over here? Right, so this is your usual Phoenix console, right? Which will show you where all your, or you need to log.
I'm logging in. Stand by. Here, talk more. Talk more.
In the meantime, I'll ask a question.
Yeah, sure.
Which is, I'm sure that
No,
a
go
pretty
ahead.
quick answer to that. So, in continuation of what Pedro was saying, so when everything is backed up, is there any mechanism, for example, to say, this is my environment, which is now being backed up in Druva. I've got this application, which is made up of these 3 virtual machines talking on these ports and those kind of things that takes sort of a blueprint or, I don't know, some sort of configuration of it and say, okay, now if I have to restore this in Druva, I already know how it's set up on premises, for example, and just replicates that. So you don't have to write any runbooks. It automatically creates that for you. Is that kind of functionality already there? Or
Do you want to take that?
you see what I mean? No? Just
Yes. So actually, that's something we're working on right now as we speak. First, what we would do is more of a VM level configuration.
Still doing it?
Then app level blueprinting is something that we're working on right now. But
Exactly.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because that would be quite useful for the product as well.
Yeah, and I mean, there still needs to be some level of intervention, especially when you want to recreate it in the cloud. But yes, that's absolutely something it's on our roadmap.
Right, so this is what your Druva console will look like. Jesse showed this to you. If you have in-sync workloads, you can, sorry. There's always technical difficulties when you're doing it live.
And that's because you didn't sacrifice before to the technology. That's the only reason.
Right, so you go to your Phoenix console. At this point, you've already configured your VMs for backing them up. You can see how many of your VMs have been backed up. There are a lot of statuses that you can see, and then there's a lot of analytics in this tab as well, right? Now, what I want to do is manage my DR. Yeah, no, wait. So sorry. You go into an organization or the region where you want to do your DR. Manage your disaster recovery. And then the first thing that you do is, assuming these proxies are not already configured and running in an AWS account somewhere, you will register a Phoenix proxy and put it in an AWS account. You don't have to do it manually. We've created a CloudFormation template for it. And then we've also put in a video of how do we do it so that it's easy for you guys to go in to your account and just enter the CloudFormation template, get the token, and just activate it. Right. Once you've created a proxy and it's running, let's attach a DR plan to that proxy, right? You go to the DR plan, go to create new DR plan, and over here we want to give it a name. Make sure the replication settings for this is immediately after backup, so that immediately after a backup, we are replicating to the AWS proxy and making sure that our RPO works well. Right? Which region are we going to failover to? Now, at this point, all the VMs that are in that region being backed up will show up over here. What I'll do is add all these 4 VMs into my plan and just say for failover, if I'm doing a production failover, I'm not necessarily using it for a long time, right? So I say failover to a T2 micro instance. For a test failover. For a production failover, I might give it a larger instance. Go in, map your network, because your hypervisor network may be different from your test or production failover network.
So I have to choose one instance type for all of the machines that I'm failing?
And then you can change it. So there's a way to change it later as well. So I've created a DR plan. This is my DR plan. Let's go in and show you how you can change it, right? Now, this is a machine which is carrying the bulk of your weight. You go in and just say, one second. Yeah. You update the failover settings for this, and just at this point you give it an M-type instance or something, or a C-type instance.
Is there a better way to do this on a bulk scale? Say if I had 1,000 VMs, am I going to have to go through this 1,000 times, or is there a...
It's a one-time operation though, right? For 1,000 VMs, you would select 1,000 VMs.
But what if they were all different, or there was 8 different sizings? What would we do?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
For what it's worth, the functionality you're looking at is roughly how many months old? Like 6 months old?
6 months old, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the very new functionality we'll add to it as... Oh, I forgot to turn on my... Yeah. So this is a very new feature for us, and we'll add it. That's a great question. We'll add to that as, the customers ask for it.
I noticed that the security group had to be edited. That wasn't in the defaults either, so I'm going to have to go in here and customize every machine anyway.
Or you can, I think there is one, but we can go back to it. Right, let me go into the Runbooks part of it, which is what does my recovery workflow look like? And in a unmodified setting, the only step right now is basically booting all these VMs, right? I can edit this workflow. This is where I'm adding a recovery step. My first step is my VM boot order, and I say let's boot just this VM first, and everything else goes into step 2. And you can then introduce it, you can configure these boot settings, and we basically say if these VMs don't boot, then just abort the plan, because this is my main server, and if it doesn't boot, then there's no point booting the other servers, right? Introduce a time delay.
Can you order those within the steps? Meaning, could I have...
Yes.
Okay.
And so if I go into adding a step over here, and I say these two are a step, I can basically do a drag over here and order it this way.
Question. This seems a very manual task, and as my friends asked before, it can be challenging with high numbers. I'm assuming you have APIs and that this can be automated and scripted, right?
We are... No, but in a short answer, we are going that way. We've thought about APIs. We have a pretty robust API plan, and I think we can talk about that when we get into the APIs piece. And I think Prasanna is going to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the next session.
Right. This is pretty much the last part of it, where after you've done all this manual thing, there's this one thing you have to do, which is a production failover or a test failover. Just go to the top right corner, select which kind of failover you do, and one-click failover. I'm not going to do an actual failover in this because this is a POC instance and I don't want to spoil ongoing POCs. what I've done is I have a canned environment over here, which looks like pretty much the last step where I have edited my workflow, and I'm going to show what a failover looks like, right? A job gets created over here. You can monitor your workflow and all the steps that have taken place. And then once you failed them over, you have a view of all the EC2 instances running in your VPC. Pretty soon, we are going to come in the next month. We are going to introduce a functionality to fail back, which is choose a few VMs, say fail them back to the VMware environment, and then we'll basically stop your EC2 instance and fail it back, and pretty much that's it.
Does the RBAC differentiate between the ability to test and production failover?
Yeah.
Excellent. And love to see the failback, because failover is easy.
Yeah, the failback part, yeah, which is why we have a month to go, but we are almost there.